Okay, welcome to the regular town council meeting of the town of Cave Creek, Arizona, Monday, March 4th, 2024. Have the roll call, please.
Councilmember Augerton,
Here.
Councilmember Bunch,
Here.
Councilmember Alcama,
Here.
Councilmember McGuire,
Present.
Councilmember Rhodes,
Here.
Vice Mayor Royer, here, Mayor Morris.
Present. Well, we're very fortunate tonight to have Senator Kavanaugh here. He represents us in the state legislature, and there's always a lot of fun there. So, Senator, if you would lead us in the pledge, and then the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Everyone, please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, first, thank you for inviting me. It's always a nice break to appear before a governmental body with adults on it, you know.
He hasn't
We
heard.
have a wobbly podium, but that's okay. I feel like I'm back at Fountain Hills with Grady at the manager's table. So you stole them from us. So before I begin, let me just tell you little briefly about myself, because many of you might not know my background, and that's always important to know, because now I'm your state senator. So as my accent may give away, I was not born in Arizona. I was born in New York City. I graduated from NYU back in 1973. Right after that, I went on the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police. I was there for 20 years. I retired as a detective sergeant. I spent most of my time at the bus terminal in Times Square before Rudy Giuliani cleaned it up. So it was a really fun 20-year police career. Right after I got on the Port Authority Police, we had moved to a small town outside of Manhattan, and I ran for the town council, and I spent 3 years on the town council there. And it was a very small town, one of those towns where when you enter, it says, you know, welcome to Lafayette, elevation. And then we have an elevation of our population, because it was like 1,200. But it was a nice training ground for later, government and town council work. Again, I was on the Port Authority 20 years. I got a master's degree in government while I was a cop there, and then eventually a PhD in criminal justice, because I taught a little bit in the police academy. And I said, wow, rather than become the chief of police, which is why I got the master's degree in government politics, I want to teach. But I didn't want to do real teaching, which is K-12. I wanted to do college teaching, which is basically half the work and twice the pay. And that's funny because it's really true. But I wanted to do criminal justice, obviously. So I got a PhD from Rutgers in criminal justice. In 73, I retired because you have a 20-year pension. My wife, Linda, who some of you may know because she was mayor of Fountain Hills for a little over 6 years. She hated the cold. So her and me and our 2 kids moved here to Arizona, and we wound up in Fountain Hills because we liked the small town atmosphere. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you the benefits of the small town atmosphere. Got there. Linda said, don't get on the town council when you're on the council. Last time, everybody started hating you because they only remember the votes you disagree with. I said, okay, I won't. She said, hey, go on the Parks and Recreation Commission and volunteer. That's a nice thing. So I got on the Parks and Recreation Commission. The first issue was trails in the washes, which I thought was a good idea, which everybody who lived on a wash hated. So I was in the middle of major controversy. So she said, well, you might as well run for town council. So after about 6 years on Parks and Rec, I ran for the town council. No, I'm sorry, after about 4 years. And I spent 6 years on the town council. And then I decided to increase the pool of people who I could annoy by running for the state legislature. And I've been in the legislature since 2006, so I'm in my 18th year. I've served in the House for 8 years. Then I went to the Senate for 4 years. Then I went back to the House, I think for like another 4 years. Now I'm back in the Senate. So I call myself trans-chambered. I also have been on the Appropriations Committee for all 18 years. And most of the time I've been either chair or vice chair, usually chair of the Appropriations. I'm currently chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. We are now in a situation where we have a $16 billion state general fund budget. We are short about $1.7 billion this coming budget year. So we'll be doing some cuts, we'll be doing some fund sweeps, and we'll probably be deferring some of the construction projects that we have approved in the last couple of years. It will not affect state shared revenue, so you're not going to be losing any money. I don't know if any of the planned construction projects impact Cave Creek. Most of them are state roads. We don't do too much in the area of county and city construction, so probably won't impact you in any great way. So what will, well, in terms of my bills, I do a lot of bills. Like 2 years ago, when we had a Republican governor, I had 30 bills signed into law, which is a lot of bills for a legislator. Last year, I think I had 20 signed into law. We have a Democrat governor, which is pretty good from a conservative Republican, although she vetoed 30 of my bills. So I kept my credibility with my Republican base. But I got 20 passed. Do a lot of humane animal legislation. I've 3 times awarded the Humane Society of the U.S. Legislator of the Year. I used to do a lot of anti-illegal immigration legislation, 1070, what have you. Little tough now, you know, the governor won't sign it right now. One of the big bills that I got passed out, but I'm not sure if she's going to sign it or not, is to enhance the penalty for obstructing traffic when you obstruct a large number of people. I'm sure we all remember images of the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, which was blocked, where people were trapped on it for 4 hours as demonstrators blocked the traffic and the police stood by and did nothing. So I passed the bill to increase the penalty for intentionally blocking more than 25 cars to a Class 6 felony to deter that kind of behavior. So a lot of times I'll see things and I say, hey, there ought to be a law that's crazy, and I run a bill like that. I get a lot of complaints from people who belong to homeowners associations. Most of them are good. They stop people from building, you know, purple houses next to yours. But some of them are homeowners associations from hell, which persecute their people. So I usually run bills to help people out that have those kind of HOAs. Very often it's a flag bill, you know, like this session, some woman, the widow of a World War II veteran who died, wanted to fly the service flag of her husband next to the American flag. But she would have to like put up two poles on the side of her house. It's not she didn't have a yard. And the HOA said, no, you can't do that. So running the bill that let people in HOAs have 2 flag poles off of their house instead of 1. And that's pretty common type of a thing. Let me talk about what I think is the biggest threat that the legislature currently poses to you. And it is a threat that has been there for the last maybe 4 years or so, that so far has been defeated, but which I fear we may not be able to defeat this year. And that is the legislature basically nullifying most of your zoning ordinances, most of your building codes. This is now, in the past, these efforts always failed because even though the Democrats in lockstep would get behind the League of Cities and Towns and say, no, we're not preempting local jurisdictions, now in the name of affordable housing, they're open to doing that. And then you have a number of Republicans who don't think government has any right in telling people what to do with their land. And they're open to these things. And I fear, and I don't know where the governor will stand, but I guess she could go either way. I don't know what, you know, manner of Democrat she is on this issue. But there are bills that would basically greatly encroach upon your single family zoning, where they would get rid of minimum lot sizes, let them build very multifamily houses in one-family zones. Another bill will let anybody build an accessory house, a casita. And needless to say, you'll have people building them not for grandma, but because they want to do an Airbnb rental and make money off of it. They're also, they want to limit your ability to set standards, aesthetic standards. There's one bill that wants to limit your ability to prescribe certain building materials. So they're going to literally, you know, walk all over and trash your ordinances if they get a majority of the votes. So be forewarned on that. The other big problem is the short-term rentals, and I'm not 100% sure how big a problem that is for you, but I mean, Cave Creek is generally a desirable place to go to, and those are the places that have short-term rental problems. I mean, Sedona is the you know, the basket case where It's so popular tourist-wise that literally 40% of its downtown residential housing is short-term rentals, which means that the people who work in town, they work in the schools or in the businesses, can't live in Sedona. It's a real crisis for them, because the bottom line is you can make more money renting your house for short-term rentals if you're in an area people want to be than renting it to a long-term tenant. And that's how the situation skyrocketed. This came about, well, maybe 6-7 years ago. It was a Senate bill. And it was sold as basically letting the empty nesting, grandma and grandpa with the vacant room make a few extra bucks renting it out to the exchange student from Sweden. Didn't work out that way. Like, nobody rents a room in their house for a short-term rental. Nobody wants a new stranger every week living in their house. It's all renting the whole house. And companies came in. There were companies selling stocks and buying massive numbers of these houses. So what you basically have is a decentralized horizontal hotel complex, which is destroying neighborhoods, the peace and quiet of surrounding neighbors. Having served 3 years in the Lafayette, New Jersey Town Council and 6 years on the Fountain Hills Town Council, I knew the dirty little secret that municipalities have, which of course is that ordinance enforcement, especially noise complaints and the like at night, is something which is extremely difficult. And based upon that, there's virtually no way that municipalities can adequately police these things. That's why when the short-term rental bill to let people do this came up about 6 years ago, the vote in the Senate was 29 for, 1 against, and I was the one against. I said this is going to cause major problems. This is going to be a disaster. And of course it was. I was able to pass a couple of years later a bill banning party houses, because some people bought these houses purely as event venues, and those were total horror for the residents. You might have been around when we had a couple of those. I got to ban that, but it's still a problem with different people, strangers coming into your next door neighbor's house and making noise, and outside smoking cigars, and the smoke whiffs over and the noise. So it's a disaster. I will continue to try to limit them, but like I said, there's still a flavor for allowing this. The move to reform is hard to get the votes for, because there's still some support for them. The other issue, I think, are the sober living homes. I don't know if you got hit by any of those problems, but they became a major, major disaster, particularly since there's virtually no regulations and there's virtually no oversight in these places. So a lot of them were being abused. Senator Carroll has a pretty good bill, which will allow more restrictions and more inspections, which I'm hoping I'll be voting for, and which hope that we get through. And I think he has a chance to do it because the governor of Democrats were like really upset at the way that people who were gaming that system victimized Native Americans from the Navajo reservation. They were going up there and picking them up in vans and bringing them down to Phoenix and putting them in these sober living homes, which were just generating revenue, from the government. So they were upset because of that. So they aren't looking too fondly on them. So they may be enough votes, I think, to crack down on the sober living homes. But again, before I'll open it to questions, the biggest threat you have right now are to your zoning, to your aesthetic standards reviews, to the materials you use in your houses. And I would urge you to contact my house cohorts and tell them that you don't want that you don't want to lose the ability to do that. Because my position has been, I moved into a single family, to a 1-family zoned area with kind of medium-sized lot size, because I want a little space. And I don't want somebody, if there's a vacant lot down the street, building a 3-story multi-family house, which is what these people will let you do. And by the way, if you think you're protected by your HOA, one of the laws wants to overrule the ability of an HOA to limit this stuff too. So they're coming to get you. So watch out. And any questions? Any questions or other areas you want me to speak to? I'd be more than happy to.
I have one, and other council may want to start thinking of other things, but last year we had the prohibition on the sales tax on food, which would have absolutely gutted our town because we depend on it. And what's the likelihood of that coming back?
Well, it's supposed to take effect. Doesn't it take effect in 26?
I think that's the rental.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one are you talking about?
The prohibition against taxing
Oh,
food.
I
Sales
heard
tax.
nothing about that. So I think for now that's dead.
Okay, great.
But, you know, the legislature is zombie land, so these things can rise from the dead next year. But I think the League of Cities does a pretty good job in monitoring that. Yeah, I thought you meant the rental tax. But yeah, I haven't heard anything on the food.
Okay, council, Ernie?
Senator, welcome. I had the pleasure of sitting in that middle seat in May of 2020 when we had two major wildfires in the town of Cave Creek, the East Desert Fire and the Ocotillo Fire. I'm a little dismayed at seeing the fireworks stuff come back again. We're a wildland urban interface community. Irresponsible use of consumer fireworks, especially what they're kind of showing where they a little bit, not full aerial, but aerial from the ground, are concerning to us because we have this invasive weed called stink net, or you probably got it out in your neighborhood as well. If you don't, it's coming. It's a very dangerous thing. I'm wondering if there's any way I seem like around 2000, I've been here since 2005, so you're like a relative newcomer starting in 2006.
I said I was a pioneer.
We were able to do some stuff several years ago, and then the legislature and Infinite Wisdom came back and took those rights away from us. Is there any way that you can stop that from being a danger? It's a big deal, this community.
Yeah. There is a bill that at least will allow you to like license the people who sell them and put some restrictions on you know where they're sold and what have you. There was a bill last year to limit noise-making ones, but it didn't go anywhere because the current law doesn't allow noise-making ones. It's purely the aesthetic type ones. The problem is, in terms of banning them, is like it was passed, you know, many years ago, like 06, whatever you said. What year was it?
05. Yeah.
05. And you know, everybody said, if you pass this, there'll be forest fires and the state will be ablaze. And we really didn't see that. So to the extent that you can give us reports of where those fireworks have started a fire, that would be helpful because, you know, you need kind of evidence to do that. And, you know, and there could also be other restrictions in terms of, you know, when we're in a high wildfire warning area, you can't use. There are things we can do, but we really could use, we need to have evidence that's saying these things are causing fires because we haven't gotten that yet. And that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was nice when we had the ability to actually regulate locally. And when you say licensing where they're sold from, directly across Carefree Highway is Fry's, which is in the city of Phoenix. And I'm sure Phoenix would love to have the sales tax revenue from those particular devices,
Yeah.
which end up in Cave Creek. And we all know that very few citations are written on July 4th or New Year's Day. It just doesn't happen because it's over so fast, but so's a fire.
Well, I mean, get evidence to the league, and I think the league is in a good situation to push, you know, reasonable restrictions. I think the restrictions are reasonable and founded on information. It's something that can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get to sign disaster declarations for 2,500 acres of fire in a community that's 32 square miles, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions from council? Well, thank you very much, Senator.
Okay, my
it's-
pleasure.
it's-
And, you know, I just, if you have any issues come up or you have questions, just, you know, just give a call. You know, I'm there and, you know, in a couple of weeks, committee hearings will be over and we'll be waiting for the governor to, you know, start serious negotiations. So I'll be twiddling my thumb a lot. So I'll be more than happy to entertain any calls.
Well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The next thing on the agenda tonight is public announcements. Does council have any public announcements?
I have a comment and,
Well,
the comment is this. As I drive down Carefree Highway and look north, the debris that comes from the businesses along that street is just piling up along Carefree Highway on our side of the street. And I'm wondering, is there any thought, any plan going into getting that cleaned up? Are there citizens that will help us clean that up? Where's the daylight there?
Mayor and Council, I just want to let you know that over the weekend, I received an email from a citizen that has offered to kind of help with that. And in fact, there's supposed to be some people here representing him tonight, and I also offered to meet with him. A lot of cities have what's called Adopt a Street program. And so I've talked to Hal. Hal and I will be meeting with this resident to see if there might be an opportunity to handle it that way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Basically, we provide the bags, they pick it up, and we then collect the bags.
All right.
good.
I just wanted to congratulate our town for hosting a wonderful State of the Town, our first inaugural event that we've held, and Bob did a wonderful job leading the discussion, and the staff was excellent as well. And it was a full house at the library, and a lot of important information was disseminated. And I think a lot of people hopefully watched after the fact. So I just think it was a great idea. It was Bob's idea to have it because a lot of other communities have these states of the town, cities. And now we do. And it's a great way to have FaceTime with our residents and our visitors, and for them to learn about what we're working on in the past, our accomplishments, but also looking forward. So congratulations to all.
Others? Next on the agenda is call to public.
Bill Pastor,
Are we working?
Yes.
Great. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, member of the council, as always, I want to thank you for your service here. This is a challenging job and it pays so well. We've really earned the money this time. I'm here to talk about the trail situation. And I'm really kind of puzzled why we're having to do this again, but I have to tell you, I'm greatly impressed at the authority of this council, because it turns out if you go to the Supreme Court and you're not satisfied, you can always relitigate right here in front of this council. And I'm kind of puzzled by all that. So I watched, the videos are wonderful because you can watch it more than once. And I have to tell you, the first time I saw this and saw that this trail that we've been promised since I first heard about it in 2011, that's not happening, it makes you angry. But the more I watch this, I realize that, we have a problem in that we have a divide in the town that you know about. But I listen to this and we're the deplorables. We're on the wrong side of the tracks. We're the outsiders. And then I thought about that some more. I wasn't angry. I was sad about that because for some reason, the east side of this town doesn't consider us their neighbor. They don't consider that we are equal citizens in Cave Creek. I heard one of them say we've got enough trails. Well, this is the trail map right here for Cave Creek that's on the site. If I fold it in half and show you the west side, do you know what's not on here? 1 inch of Cave Creek trail. Nothing at all on the west side of the creek. How did that happen? So, and I'm thinking about this and I look at this and say, okay, the trail on Morningstar, what happens when you get on the trail on Morningstar? You know what? You ride right past your neighbors. Well, why am I not entitled to ride past those same neighbors myself doing that? What did we do wrong that somehow we're not entitled to be part of the town? But I realize that really what's happened is those people are scared. And they're scared because they've been told a lot of things that just aren't real. And I have to tell you that this is about a trail, not about a road. We've never come and asked you for a road. This is about a trail, a very short piece of trail. And in thinking about this a little bit more, I want to extend an invitation to all of the residents on the east side. These new modern trails, they have this innovation now. They go both directions. Did you know that? They can actually come over and have access to the Cave Creek Regional Park, which is spectacular. I'm going to have to talk faster. They have access to the Maricopa Trail. And by the way, I love trails. The Maricopa Trail wraps around two sides of my property, and the happiest moment in my day is when I look out and I see people on horseback wearing cowboy hats and think, I don't have to worry about wars or inflation rates or pandemics or anything else, because that didn't change. And the last thing I want to touch on, that's flashing red at me. We really need to think about this town as a town, not a good side of the tracks and bad side of the tracks. And so I just ask you to remember, all of you, you represent everyone in Cave Creek. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill.
Terry Smith.
Mayor, Council, Terry Smith, 39825 North 26th Street. Bill has said a lot of it. And what I hope each one of you, and especially people that haven't been around for a long time on council in this town, we on the west side have been, what'd you call us?
Deplorables, I think. There's a riffraff.
Ugly, the ugly stepchild. I've got my notes here. I'll try to stay on target with it. Bill kind of got me off because he hit a lot of the points. I was on council back when we were putting in Spur Cross. I ran on council and I didn't want to go on council. But I ran for one reason, because they were going to call this park that they're putting in up there, Spur Cross Conservation Area. Conservation meant to me that we are the ones that are going to use it and we're going to keep everybody out. And we are on the west side. So I ran on council under one thing, and I got more votes than anybody that year. And I ran on it just for trails. And that got us a trail on the south side of Spur Cross, so we actually would have access. If I wouldn't have run on council, everybody up here in North Cave Creek would have said, we're going to have one trail, one way going in so we can get in there. But I got that through, and that was my major accomplishment when I was on council. And I've been here, well, I moved out to Cave Creek here in 88 or 89 in that area. So I've been here a long time. I've seen it. The other thing is I understand people are objecting to this trail, and apparently there was a whole bunch of people objecting. What I've heard, they're saying all kinds of things like it's going to be open and they can use it for a road. It's a trail. It is designated for non-vehicular trail for bicycles, people walking, and horses, just like in the park. It's not a trail for motorcycles or side-by-sides or anything like that. It is a trail. The sin is it goes across Cave Creek Wash. And my God, we cannot let, like Bill said, the people from the west side get over here. And the reason why these people are so much up in arms about this trail is they have 30 miles of trails in Cave Creek. If you look at the map, you'll see trails up Spur Cross, you'll see trails on Schoolhouse, you'll see trails everywhere. We have no Cave Creek trails west of Cave Creek Wash. This town spends approximately $100,000 a year on trails. And that means, let's say, take 5 years, that's $500,000, $500,000 on trails. How much was spent in west side of Cave Creek Wash? Zero. Like Bill says, you're council members. We are part of this town. And we have been put down, left out. There's no road can ever be built across up here because of the annexation agreement that was put in when they annexed up there. So we can't drive to town. People in North Cave Creek can drive to town right from their house. We have to go down to Carefree Highway and come across. Years ago, there was New River Road. But Vince, the mayor at that time, when it flooded one time, said, we're going to close it off. So we can't even come across New River Road anymore. It's been closed off. So we've been shut off from the town, looked down upon, and been deprived of any improvements, really. Everything is North Cave Creek. So I plead with you, when this comes up, take a look and represent all of Cave Creek, not just the people that are yelling because they're afraid that I might ride my horse through their neighborhood. Okay? And besides that, that trail is as much benefit for North Cave Creek, because then you'd be able to go into Spur Cross, come down out of Spur Cross, come back into North Cave Creek. It's up here in the north area. So it's for everybody, not just us. But at least for us, we're going to have a little piece of a trail after all these years. What else was I going to complain about?
We probably need to wrap it up, Terry.
Really?
Yeah, you got the red light blinking at you there.
I don't know what that means.
Well, we're going
That other guy got longer. Let's see, what else here? I don't know. We're pleading with you. It is important to us. It's important to this town. But most of all, it's important that we can have something that makes us feel like we're part of this town and actually want it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No additional cards.
Okay, we have one written comment that came in on time, and this is from Star Thornton. She asked that we read this. Mayor Morris, Vice Mayor Royer, Councilman Bunch, and Councilman McGuire, thank you for allowing me to set the record straight. For the record, the information in my comments are facts obtained from public documents. At the last council meeting, Mr. Arlen made many false statements regarding the Morningstar Road Trail alignment. The following comments are my rebuttal. Mr. Arlen said the town was sued and lost. The comment is not true per the Superior Court case CV-17-0115-PR. In fact, the town won and has the right to put the trail through without the approval of the residents. In addition to losing the case, the plaintiff had to pay court costs. It is important to understand that the trail easement does not follow the existing road. The trail easement does not follow the 1969 road easement either. Mr. Freeman illegally improved the road without a permit. The trail easement is only 10 feet, which is too narrow for a road, and it is not motorized, as Mr. Arlen said. The trail is for hikers, bikers, and horses. In addition, the actual trail itself will be between 4 and 6 feet wide. Another important point is that to put a road through goes against the general plan. In addition, Cahava Springs would have to widen Morningstar on Spur Cross to allow for increased traffic. In order to obtain permission to widen those roads, the developer would have to pay 100% agreement from each, would have to have 100% agreement from each homeowner along those roads. I live on Spur Cross and certainly would not be in favor of widening the road. In what alternative universe would 100% of creekers agree on anything? Mr. Arlen insinuated that Mr. Stapp, Cahava Springs, received something from the town for the gift of the easement. Mr. Stapp received nothing for the gift. Mr. Arlen further insinuated that the town council and staff are less than honest about the gift of the easement. These are both false statements. I added the verb in there. Transactions must be disclosed. It is the law. To even suggest that our council and staff are not honest could be construed as slander. He has no facts to show us, only his opinion. Opinion is only hot air without facts to back it up. Miss Wijaka, I'm sure I mispronounced that, should be made aware that the trail does not touch her property. She has been made a victim of the false narrative spread by Mr. Arlen. Councilman Augerton is anti-trails as evidenced by his voting and his speaking in the past. Mr. Rhodes owns horses. It surprises me that he would be against more trails to ride. I walked part of the trail the other day. It will be a lovely addition to our town. In closing, please do not sign a petition based on bias, bullying, and fear mongering. I strongly urge you to get the information for yourself as I did. I just say that one of the things about call to the public, the council cannot respond to call to public, except if there is a personal attack. And if Mr. Councilman Ogden or Councilman Rhodes feels that way, you're welcome to rejoin to here.
I have. Mr. Mayor, please proceed.
Okay. Leslie. Okay. That concludes call to the public. Town manager report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In light of the comments from tonight regarding the Morningstar Trail and what we've heard from the comments that you just read and also from the last council meeting, I think it's really important for me to put some factual public information out effective tomorrow that addresses both some of the concerns that have been raised but with factual information because there's some misinformation we've been reading about and hearing about. And so the plan is to do that tomorrow, and we will address a number of the points that have been brought up, not only tonight, but also at the last council meeting. So we'll do that tomorrow. I do have some announcements I also wanted to share with the council and the public. Our brush drive-through and drop-off is going to be coming up on this Saturday. The first one is March 9th. The second one will be April 13th. It'll be at the Cave Creek Water Ranch at 4300 East Carefree Highway. So this is really designed as a program for people to clear a lot of the brush that they have on their properties to try to make their property safer and avoid having some issues with fire. Also, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, last week we did have the State of the Town, and I wanted to let the public know that the video of that is available on our website and YouTube. Not only the video of actually the presentation made by Mayor Morris, but also the short video clip is a separate clip that's available for viewing. And also we had a Phoenix Interconnect open house meeting last week. Last Thursday night, about 16 people showed up for it. And I thought that Utilities Director Cruz Weisner did a great job in addressing concerns and as well as the consultants who were there. That is also, we did a live stream of that. And so for those residents that may not have been able to view it, we did record that. So that's also available on our website. Those are all the reports I have tonight, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. First item on the general agenda is reschedule the Monday, March 18th, 2024 regular town council meeting to Monday, March 25th, 2024, presented by the Deputy Town Manager, Town Clerk.
Mayor and Council, I'm requesting to move the March 18th meeting to March 25th so that we don't have to worry about interfering with the elections that are on March 19th. The council chambers will be used for it's the presidential preference election on March 19th. So the only other room we have available to us would be in our conference room, which is awfully small. So if we so do choose, we would move the meeting to March 25th.
And Mayor, if I may, just one other item too. So we were made aware by the Utilities Director that if we do not go this month, we lose our pricing on the guaranteed maximum price for the Phoenix Interconnect project. So we're talking about really another advantage of this is clearly saving money. So I would highly recommend that we move the meeting to March 25th.
I'm not sure I understand why the.
So the pricing that we have is good through the end of March.
Oh, through the end of March. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we don't do it then we lose that.
Okay. Questions from council? I see no public comments, so we're ready for a motion then. Does someone have a motion?
Well, I'll do that. Motion to reschedule the Monday, Yeah, good. March 18th, 2024, regular town council meeting to Monday, March 25th, 2024.
Second.
Having seen the chaos in this room 2 years ago, or when we almost had a meeting with all the stuff set up in here, this is a really good idea to change it.
Thank you, Ernie. It makes sense.
Other comments from council? Seeing none, we are ready for a voice vote. All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Second item on the agenda is the second public hearing on the proposed extension of an alternative expenditure limitation, home rule option, and council discussion approval of resolution R 2024-03, a resolution of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, proposing an alternative expenditure limitation. And this is presented by the interim finance director, who has approached the podium.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So Elias Joan, our interim finance director, will be doing the presentation this time around. With that, I'll turn it over to the finance director.
Mayor and Council, good evening. This action item is about the holding a public hearing as per Arizona revised statute before the home rule extension goes to the on the ballot, if the resolution is approved tonight. Before you tonight is a resolution to put on the ballot the home rule extension. As mentioned at the first presentation last month for the first public hearing. This is about, I think, the sixth time this initiative goes on the ballot and it gets voted for since 1999. The Arizona revised statute imposed an expenditure limitation. It goes back to 1979, 1980, using the base limit of expenditure as the baseline back in 1980. And then it goes up every year by the CPI, inflation index, and the population. But back in 1990, of course, they didn't realize the fast growth in the communities, and so the expenditure limitation was not adequate for home for towns and cities in Arizona. So they imposed these two options: home rule, and the other one is the permanent extension adjustment. The state imposed limitation on expenditure is $6.2 million. With the home rule option, the town is allowed to spend up to the total revenues, and that is $56.5 million. Having this in place allows the town to continue spending on their projects, capital improvements, mainly, of course, salaries and benefits, and operating expenses. If this doesn't pass tonight, then it'll be draconian cuts, as mentioned at the last month public hearing. And basically, this is not about raising taxes. The town is not asking the voters to raise taxes. They're simply looking at extending this option for more years per Arizona revised statute. So with that, I turn it over to Mayor and Council if you have any questions. But again, this would be the sixth time it goes before the voters for approval, and it's been approved every time since 1999.
Questions from council? Councilmember McGuire.
Home rule, the possible imposition is disruptive at best. Has there been action by the League of Cities or others to try to negate this particular difficulty for the town. There just doesn't seem to be any practical reason for it.
I'll take that.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Thanks, council member. So it's a very good question. As the interim finance director mentioned, there are two options. One is the home rule option, which, as you're familiar with, is every 4 years. The other one is called permanent base adjustment. And there are a handful, there's not quite as many cities and towns that have that, but I would expect a town our size, once we stabilize on our capital improvement budgets and expending, even though those are also exceptions, but once we kind of can forecast into the future, probably beyond the next 5 to 10 years, I would really move and try to get us to go to the permanent base adjustment. There's quite a bit that goes into the forecasting to get the numbers where they need to be, but a number of large cities in Arizona have done that, and so they've been able to do that successfully, and they take it to the voters. You still have to get voter approval for that. So that would be, I mean, my opinion is those are really the two options. Otherwise, it takes a constitutional change, and that would be a really big hardship to try to get the league to try to take on that issue, because the legislature, I can't imagine this legislature would want to make any changes like that. But the permanent base adjustment is really, I think, for us, the way to go in the future. We probably have one more election like this for home rule, and then we'll likely want to maybe look at doing a permanent base the next go around.
So is the permanent base possibility something that the voters would pass once and then we would be free of
We'd be
this
free of having
particular
to go back
restriction?
every 4 years. I'm sorry to
Hope
make
we
that
can
clear,
do
but
that.
that's a good point.
Other questions?
Brady, does the town do something in the publicity pamphlet explaining this to the voters?
Absolutely. And we're likely going to have some public information sessions on it as well. I think it's really important for people to understand that without their approval of this, this is going to be causing some dire situation for the provision of services in town. Our utilities are not even really set up as standalone enterprise funds, and so those would be likely affected by this as well. So we really need the public to understand that that this is very important for them to consider and possibly approve. But we will hold public information sessions like public open houses. But we will also have information on our website and other ways of trying to communicate to residents, but we cannot advocate, at a staff level. However, all of you as elected officials can advocate both in your role as elected official here as well as in the public. But staff cannot spend staff resources or money or anything to advocate because it's considered a political issue.
Do we know offhand what the voting result was in 2020 for home rule? I believe it was pretty big in favor.
I don't know the numbers,
Well,
but we can look up and
yeah.
let the council know.
I think it was 80-20, something like that. So I think our community understands.
I have not heard of this not passing in other cities. After a while that they've done it, people tend to trust and understand. But part of that is the public information. You really got to make sure that people understand that the base level of services that they've come to expect would not be able to be provided business as usual without being able to expend the money.
Agree.
I think home rule was a necessity. Okay, there's a public hearing on this, and so I opened the public hearing.
I have no one wishing to speak.
There are no speakers. The public hearing is now closed, and we are looking for a motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Motion to approve the resolution R 2024-03, a resolution of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, proposing an alternative expenditure limitation.
Second,
Is this a voice vote, Counselor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, a voice vote on this. All those, first of all, comments, the motion, second, anyone else?
I just not passing this is actually financial municipal suicide. And I hope the voters understand that as well when it gets to them.
Okay. So we'll have the vote now, a voice vote. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is, thank you, Paul Aston, welcome to town. That's your
Yes.
first appearance before us. You did great.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Council consideration of ordinance numbers 2024-02, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the town code Title III Administration, Chapter 30, Town Council by amending Section 30.02, entitled Term of Office to provide for a voter-approved 4-year term for mayor and a 4-year staggered terms for council members, commencing with the terms of office commencing after the general election of November 2024 and 2 consecutive 4-year term limits. This is presented by the town attorney and the deputy town manager, town clerk.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Members of the council, this is the second read. The statutes allow you to ask the voters to extend to 4-year terms. That's what this does. The third paragraph that you see is the one that says if the voters approve the extension of the 4-year terms and staggered, then the ordinance you'd pass tonight includes term limits to 2 successive 4-year term limits. That would not be effective. In fact, the ordinance would be rescinded if indeed the voters do not approve the staggered 4-year terms.
Nothing to add unless you have questions.
Okay, any questions by council or by the council?
I have a question. Do either one of you know how many other towns have 4-year staggered terms? Is it the majority of towns in Arizona, cities and towns?
I'm a town attorney for 8 in all have that. You're the outlier.
Other questions? Okay, well, there is public comment on this.
Julie Goldhammer?
Hi, Julie Goldhammer, 34022 North 52nd Street. Thank you, Mayor Morris, Vice Mayor Royer, and council members. This is a hard thing to comment on, but I feel like I need to be true to myself. A couple of these things are just going to be observations. Obviously, this is a second reading. I have gotten up before and spoken about this. I guess some of this would be questions. Why wasn't this done before people pulled packets? I feel like, you know, I understand the continuity. I am in agreement with continuity. I understand that other towns do have 4-year terms and they are staggered. It's just, I think we could have had a little bit more foresight if this was a concern. We knew the election was coming up. And I would ask that you consider delaying this for another round. I know that doesn't help all of us that have been out there, and I was out there again today getting signatures. I don't want this to come across that I in no way would not want to serve for 4 years, but I do want to put out a little observation. Just because I think the 4-year terms, I understand, are going to be distributed based on the number of votes. And I think that is a way that you're trying to keep this not be arbitrary. However, Mr. Terry, who spoke before, said he ran for the council and he got the most votes on the trail vote. So somebody new could conceivably come in and be one of those top vote getters. And that's not continuity, in my opinion. But I think there's just a better way than the top vote getters to do it. Because I just feel like I don't know where those numbers come from. I'll give you another example. The statute for us to go get signatures says 5% of the vote last time, but not more than 10%. And one would question, why is it not more than 10%? I would think the more signatures we got, the better our nomination to the ballot would be. So I think the top 3 vote getters is a bit of an illogical way of choosing it. I think once the votes happen, I think people should have the option, including the top 3 vote getters, to opt in for the 4 years. Because what if somebody there just can't make that commitment because of personal reasons or otherwise? thank you for the opportunity to explain myself.
Thank you.
Ransova.
Before we start, Mr. Senator Kavanaugh said he would extend his remaining time to mine. He'll yield. That being said, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Ron Sova, Cave Creek Town Core resident. I believe that having staggered terms and term limits makes sense. I'm for that. However, the last item, at your last council meeting, comments from the council supporting a 4-year term were that a 4-year term would be better for the following reasons. It would provide greater stability and continuity for the town. It would also enable more time for council members to better learn and understand the issues of the town, such as the budgeting, the Cave Creek and the Carefree water systems, the wastewater plant, the fire station, and the Phoenix Water Interconnect, just to name a few. It was also stated that a 4-year term would allow the candidates to spend less money campaigning every 4 years versus every 2 years, and require resident petition signatures every 2 years versus the 4 years. By going door to door, it's very time consuming and grueling. It would also limit the installation of campaign signs to every 4 years instead of every 2 years within our town right-of-ways. With that said, campaigning is very time-consuming, costly, and challenging, all done to win a seat on the council to serve the town's residents and oversee the business of the town. All of this on your own time and expense and without receiving any compensation whatsoever. Good governance was never meant to be easy. It was stated that the last few councils have served and worked hard to improve the water companies, the wastewater facility, establishing a fire department, and providing better budgeting. All this was done while council members were serving 2-year terms and running for re-election. Our town is changing with growth pressures coming from our south that will require constant action to preserve and protect our unique town. Our population is growing with an influx of new residents from varied backgrounds, having unique experiences. A 2-year term would allow more residents to get involved and serve, which would allow for a newer and fresher ideas on a more timely basis to better address these unknown challenges that lie ahead. Running for office is no easy task. I know that firsthand in that I ran 4 campaigns. Winning twice, I served as a council member and as former vice mayor. Longer terms could create too much, and the key word is could, not would, create too much independence for council members and cause losing sight of the residents' current concerns, interests, and priorities. Our U.S. House of Representatives, the People's House, have had 2-year terms for over 235 years. And our town has maintained 2-year terms for over 38 years. Our town council is the people's house. I therefore ask that you consider retaining the 2-year term as our founding fathers had envisioned in 1789, which provide for a more responsive dialogue with our residents and provides a continual influx of new candidates, providing new and timely ideas and priorities. Thank you.
Thank you.
No additional speakers.
Okay. So there is public comment on this? Oh, well, yeah, it's a public comment. Okay, yeah. I guess we passed that. So at this point, then we're looking for a motion. I'll make it. Motion to approve second reading of ordinance 2024-02, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, amending the town code, Title III, Administration, Chapter 30, Town Council, by amending section 30.02 entitled Term of Office to provide for a voter-approved 4-year term for mayor and 4-year staggered terms for council members, commencing with the terms of office commencing after the general election of 2024 and 2 consecutive 4-year term limits.
Second.
I had the motion, so I will make the comment. We mentioned the towns, our council mentioned that all the towns he represents are on 4-year terms. I also did a private survey of the towns around us that are neighboring towns, what they're doing, and on 4-year terms, and I didn't find any that were on 2-year terms. So it'd be Scottsdale, Chandler, Phoenix, Peoria, Gilbert, Glendale, Mesa, and Fountain Hills, and those are the ones that I checked. I know of no towns that are on 2-year terms. And the real reason is to improve government. I don't think our town can claim that our government has been in the upper tier of managing the affairs of the town historically during this time. We've had 2-year terms. And so I don't think there's a case to be made that that government is better under 2-year terms. The reasons to submit this to the voters, my judgment from my 11 years, including on councils and on the Water Advisory Committee and then as mayor, is it will improve our government through a more experienced council and mayor. It will induce more potential candidates to serve. When I talk to people about serving on town council, many who are very qualified decide not to serve because of the onerous nature. Everyone's heard here, it's a volunteer. You have the elections every 2 years, the signs, the petitions, the campaign, the financial reports, et cetera. It does reduce the personal burden by reducing expenses, paperwork, and the time spent campaigning, and it removes the campaign signs from our streets. So I do support this. I think our town government will be better. There's no reason it shouldn't be more responsive. We have the most liberal rules that I'm aware of in governments like this for public input, and we're going to probably be doing even more of that in the future. So I do support this. You had the second?
Yeah, I think Carefree just had a vote and they decided to go to the 4-year terms. But I'm pleased to send this to the voters. Ernie may remember that this came up as a possibility a number of years ago. The town chose to keep us on a short leash, but surely this is something that the voters, I hope the voters understand the issues as to the advantages that 2-year or 4-year terms are. But I certainly support it going to the public, and that's what this is all about.
Other comments?
Dusty, you want to go?
I think I've said it in the last meeting. I oppose 4-year terms. I think if you can't go out and get a couple hundred signatures to get on the ballot every 2 years, we've got bigger problems than sitting around for 4 years. As far as getting to know the budget and everything else, you get out of it what you put into it. And I made sure at least that I went and put a lot of time in the budget when we first did it. Now, we have different terminology in Arizona, so that caught me a little bit by surprise. But I think for the 3 new council members, we wouldn't have had 3 new council members. And the voters would have chosen to continue on if we didn't have those 2-year terms. But they brought 3 new council members on to get a fresh opinion on things. So I think it's good to have 2-year terms. And I applaud Mr. Sova because he's absolutely correct. The Continental Congress took 6 months to determine that they wanted 2-year terms for the people's house because they wanted more input and they wanted to force those legislators to go back to their constituents every 2 years to face the music. That's it for me.
I believe they also thought that 2 years was plenty of time for someone to give up for the government and they could go back to their normal way of life at that time, thus believing in a form of term limits. Having sat up here on this dais for a very long time, I kind of have mixed emotions about this. I've seen councils come and go. I've seen 2 years, you know, first of all, we are a constitutional republic, and that's how we should be handling this up here as well. Not a democracy where one person decides that, or two wolves decide that they're going to eat the one sheep. I see this a 4-year term as people possibly be able to make a better decision based on the facts before them and not worry so much, you know, for the whole community as opposed to worrying about what people in the audience are thinking. I will vote for this. I will likely vote for it if it does come to the ballot. I support this.
I empathize with the people who are just deciding to run for this office, and I see that there's 5 of you here. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but since one spoke her opinion on this subject, I'm wondering if we could hear from any of the others. Are they able to come to the dais and speak?
Can we take it out of order? We've already gone through that public comment. I mean, you as the council could waive that if you wish, if they wish to speak. But
Can
right
we
now,
waive that?
your code says they've already had the opportunity to come. But you could decide to waive it if you.
Is there any objection to waiving that?
No, good.
No.
Then, if any of you are willing, unexpectedly, to come to the podium and tell us your thoughts. Were 2 years of what you wanted as a 4-year commitment too much to ask? Tom?
Sure. You want me?
Sure, come on up, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if I get this right. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Tom Secor, I live in Rancho Manana, and I thought I was going to be talking about the cleanup committee that one of my neighbors talked about. But anyway, we'll meet with you later on. To be blunt, haven't really dove into the 2 versus 4 piece. But off the top, I would probably find myself pulling for more of a 4-year term than a 2-year term. Getting up to speed, and should I be elected, I'm going to dive in. I'm kind of an all-in guy anyway. So I think I can get up to speed pretty quickly. But having to get signatures, which getting a couple hundred signatures, it sure sounds easy. It's proving maybe a little more difficult than what I thought it would be, but I'll get there. But yeah, I think a 4-year term kind of lets you get into the office. I guess the other way I would think about it too is I don't want Grady to leave in 2 years. You know, I'd like him to stick around for 4, 8, 15. You know, I think you just get some continuity. And then lastly, I would just say the time that I've been here in Cave Creek, there's a lot of folks that have, you know, come from different ideologies and that sort of thing. But the one thing that's been constant is love for this town. And so I just think that in a nonpartisan position that you all hold right now, there's going to be some disagreement and whatnot, but I think we could all agree on what we're going to do is what's best for the town. So yeah, I would probably find myself right now on a 4-year lane, but also leave the right to change my mind.
Thanks,
All right,
Tom.
thanks.
Anybody else out there? Cynthia?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Cynthia Driscoll, also running for town council. I would not be opposed to a 4-year term. I anticipated a 2-year term. My planning commission assignment is a 3-year term. All of it indicates that you have a willingness to learn and serve and cover some new territory. So that, to me, is the important part. I think the best thing about this resolution is it strictly goes to the voters. The voters get to decide if this is a good idea. So again, I would accept either one, but I would support the council moving this forward so that the voters can have a say. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Alex, you'd like to approach?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Alex Madison, currently running for town council. I haven't had a lot of time to look into it, obviously. However, I think there's two things. There's the fact that most of the other municipalities are following the 4-year term. So to me, that the evidence indicates the majority, it works for the majority versus the 2-year. There is a lot of time spent, gathering signatures, running, all of that, if you do it every 2 years. But also my personal experience as businessman, owner, executive, what I've seen is it always takes 1 year of a cycle for somebody to get into the groove, to learn how things work. There's a lot of time, and I'm not questioning anybody's time commitment. It takes a lot of time to learn that. And once you do that, I feel you become much more productive. And I feel like if you're doing that, if somebody's coming in every 2 years, you're not really getting the benefit of that individual in year 1. So if I was to make a decision based on the information I have today, I would side with the 4-year term limit because of that experience of mine. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Lastly, Jim? If you don't want to, you don't have to, no pressure.
I'm not sure I have anything else to add, actually, it's make sure everyone says, reflects on views as well.
Very good, thank you all.
Okay, we'll continue down here with comments.
I want to speak to the idea of bringing in new individuals every 2 years. I see a balance of what's happening between what's happening in the Senate, where you have 6-year terms, and in the House of Representatives, you have 2-year terms. With the staggered terms, truly every 2 years, you are bringing in new people and new ideas.
Well,
What I like is that we're having a good conversation about this, and it is going to come to the people we serve to make that decision with us. Continuity, I believe, is important. I have gone through that learning curve, and I feel like I'm still on that curve. It's also important. I really believe that new voices on this dais are reflective of what the town people have asked for. And so I probably will vote for this. I'm still conflicted about that, but I'm really glad we're going to send it out, and with the assurances that we will do a good job of explaining what we're trying to do here. Thanks.
no comment.
Not this evening, thank you.
Okay. So at this point, we're ready for a vote, and so it'll be a roll call, please.
Councilmember McGuire,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes,
No.
Councilmember Algerton,
No.
Councilmember Bunch,
Yes.
Councilmember Elkama,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Royer,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Yes. Motion passes 5-2, if I counted correctly. Next on the agenda, and so what that means is this will be submitted to the voters, so the voters decide. Number 4 is council discussion approval of second reading of ordinance 2024-01, an ordinance of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, pertaining to the National Flood Insurance Program, adopting the reference revised flood insurance study and flood insurance rate maps and floodplain management regulations, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing penalties, presented by the town engineer.
Good
Sounds like
evening.
a fun job you've got there, Al.
Oh, yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. We had the first reading at the last meeting. We have had no changes. This is just to update the ordinances so they reflect the current flood insurance rate maps and the current rules and regulations of the state. There were no changes, and again, this was drafted by, in conjunction with the Water Resources, State Department of Water Resources and Flood Control District of Maricopa County. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none? There is public comment on this.
I have no one wishing to speak.
Okay, looking for a motion. Anybody like floods?
I'll do that if you like. Motion to approve second reading of ordinance 02024-01, an ordinance of the mayor and town council of the town of Cave Creek, Maricopa County, Arizona, pertaining to the National Flood Insurance Program, adopting the reference revised flood insurance study and flood insurance rate maps and floodplain management regulations, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing penalties.
Second.
This is voice vote. So, any comments first? Comments?
No.
Okay, well, let's go voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 7-0. The fifth and last item on the agenda tonight is a council consideration and possible direction regarding including public involvement in the site plan approval process presented by the town manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll recall that I think it was my first council meeting. We had a site plan that came before council for its consideration, and it was ultimately approved. But as part of that discussion, there appeared to be some concerns that there had not been really enough or sufficient public discussion on this particular site plan. As it turned out, this particular item, because under state law, site plans, so long as they meet all the zoning requirements and all the other town regulations, they're more or less considered administrative in nature. Therefore, there's really not a whole lot that could be done. There can be some suggestions, but the applicant is not necessarily obligated to make the changes with that. So based on hearing what we heard from the citizens that night and also from the council, it appeared that there was a little bit of a room for opportunity to improve how this process works. And so one of the things I'm suggesting is that we, before we even have a site plan, go before Planning and Zoning Commission and then council ultimately, that we add a step, and that step is to have a public open house. At the public open house, we would have the applicant and staff be there, and the public obviously would be made aware of this open house. And staff would start off by explaining that how that process works under state law, that that the applicant is here to kind of give an overview of their project, and that staff has reviewed it, and this is what their findings are. And then provide the opportunity for the public to informally interact with both the applicant and the staff, and for staff to answer questions of the public. So what I have before you is that kind of the process outlined in the staff report tonight. And I believe that this would really help address what was probably missing in this process to begin with, and that it more or less mirrors how we handle a lot of land use types of cases. And I highly recommend council to discuss this, figure if this is what they want to do. The other thing I do want to point out that some of our larger cities in the valley also have this be truly purely an administrative process, where it's site plans are, so long as the zoning and regulations are all met, it's done at the staff level. But I've also worked in small communities where this is still a legislative process that basically provides the oversight of this and makes sure that there's, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So my recommendation is to keep the process as is, but just add the step that I've mentioned. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Grady, do you think this is a great burden to the staff to conduct such an open house? And all the follow-up that's required?
If we were doing a lot of site plans, I would say yes. But it's only going to be a few of these that would happen probably a year.
You're
I would
basing that on what?
discussion with the director.
How many cases are coming forward?
I asked how many that we've had of these types of cases, and there's only been a couple on average a year. So I'm not thinking that this is going to be burdensome. Don't get me wrong. I think that anytime we place mandates or other recommendations like this on staff, with a very lean and limited staffing, and no support, it does fall on the professionals to actually carry this out. But I do think it's all better for improved communications and with the public, and also trying to explain on the front end before it gets to planning and zoning and also the council level, how the process works so that people go into it being more informed and not taking it out or beating up on the commissioners at the Planning and Zoning Commission or the council. So I think if we do all that we can on the front end, I think it actually ends up being a better process all around.
What about from the perspective of the applicant? Do you think they would be willing to go through this?
I think if the applicant goes through it, I think that I can see some positive coming out of it. And the reason why I say that is I can see an applicant, as an example, and I'll just use this. I might have heard this when this had come up before, but like a trash enclosure. There might be residents that live near the site and may have a concern about, like beer cans and bottles being dumped into a trash enclosure that might be near, like within a couple 100 feet of their home or their unit. And so that kind of noise might be disruptive, but just them hearing that firsthand from the residents, they may come up with a better solution than because they may not have taken that into consideration. They may have been taking parking and other things into consideration and not the neighbors. So I think it's positive for the applicant as well.
Last question. Have you done this in previous positions in other cities that you've worked at?
Not specifically for this, but for other types of, we had when I was in Fountain Hills, we had a civic engagement or citizen engagement process that we adopted, which I've been thinking about doing here, which basically takes a look at all of our public processes and looks at ways of improving ways of engaging with our residents. We found that it was very useful once we put it into place for greater trust of town officials. And, when we would go to the ballot to ask people questions or have them vote on things, they had a better trust that we weren't trying to pull something over them, because we actually invited them to meetings and tried to get their input on things before we just told them what we were going to do. So I do think that's the direction I like to basically go, probably a little bit longer term in another year or so, get something like that in place.
Sounds good. Thank you for.
Sure.
Questions down here?
Trying to figure out what the question is. You don't?
No, I do appreciate you taking a listen to what the residents were saying. And I do think this is, in your experience, is better dialogue between the staff and the community helpful?
It is, because I think sometimes the residents, they might view staff as being like overly close to the applicant. And I think it's good for them to get like honest answers from the staff and see them in an informal setting rather than like in an office. Or I think it's just a good way of interacting at an informal level.
Thank you.
Mr. Sims. You knew I'd come to you, didn't you? Obviously, above and beyond is not required of any applicant, above and beyond our ordinances and zoning and regulations. However, it would appear that community acceptance could actually benefit a project that someone's bringing forward. Is there any exposure? I know you hate that word, with the town running this, would informal between a developer and the neighbors be a more appropriate approach?
Well, this is, are you saying? rather than-
Without town involved in the get together to begin with?
Well, as I look at the jurisdictions, the smaller the community, the more your counterparts want to stay involved. And so what they do is, and so smaller the community, what this does is this invites dialogue, right where I thought you were going, Ernie. If I'm the applicant, I actually do want to sit down and talk to the neighbors and talk to staff, because it's staff is going to be making the decision. Grady said it well. This is not legislation. This is administration. And when staff makes the decision, they're applying objective criteria. And then that comes before you. You then can ask questions and just see to staff, how did you come up to these answers? Now, I must warn you, to the extent any of you want to disagree publicly with the applicant, that's probably something we should talk about before the meeting, because that does create exposure. Because, but the goal here is simply dialogue. And you already have a community involvement on zoning, but that's where you have absolute discretion. That's legislation. And what zoning has done, zoning requires a community meeting and it requires staff to do it. All Grady has done here is he listened to that meeting and he applied the community meeting standard to site plan. But that doesn't change the limits on your discretion, where I thought you were going. I don't know that it's good to just send the applicant off and talk to the neighbors. I think it's probably better because you want your staff involved in that discussion so they can learn. And it may be that, and more importantly, it communicates, because I heard many people in your community agitated about we don't want staff running amok. This is one way that staff can listen to the community, but more importantly, in this meeting, communicate to the community why he or she believes this is an appropriate answer. So I recommend this.
Yeah, I can remember back when we approved the McDonald's 12, 13 years ago and placed the hitching post, which is only the second one and maybe in the country that's got a place to hitch horses when you go to the McDonald's, where we were actually asking for something above and beyond at that point in time and did get it. Because the community, it was a benefit to the community down there.
I think that example, I mean, that's exactly the product of having a discussion with the applicant, the staff, and the neighbors to have that very, I can't believe you got McDonald's to put in hitching posts. I mean,
Well, it was,
that shows you the benefit of open dialogue.
it was Stuart Jean.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So basically what we're saying, guys, if I understand this correctly, and lady, that we would do that process. And then would the planning commission have to get beat up by residents as well? And we're going to continue, or would that process cement in place what the applicant was willing to do in the very beginning?
This all started when there was a proposal from the commission about trying to follow the lead of the larger cities and delegate some of that discretion out from you down to the staff, and you all rejected that. That's my comment about the size of the community. You want to stay involved. Your code requires the commission to make a recommendation, so this doesn't replace the commission. This just has a community involvement step before they get to the commission, very similar to the neighborhood meetings you have on zoning. And all this is doing is inviting dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Breckner about this, the head of the planning commission, and it was a very cumbersome process because communication is very important. But it put the planning commission in a situation where they are asked to make a decision on the basis of the codes, and yet the public wanted this to be a part of communication. And I think communication will help the public to understand, particularly the issue of property rights. Property rights are very important, and it's very important that people understand where the limitations of property rights and why they exist. And this can happen if there is discussion. It can be a learning process for both sides.
I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Um, and for example, the loss of our Tumbleweed Hotel. There was a part of the community that was just aghast at that action. And the reason they had questions was because they had no clue about what was going to happen or who was going to do it or what it might look like, or is there going to be a chapel on the street and is it going to be next to the bar? And I mean, there's 100 questions that go with that, and they're legitimate questions. Main Street is our living room. It's what we drive through. It's what we see. It's why we moved here. Each one of you in this room made a choice to live here for a reason. And those reasons are near and dear to us at the cost of whatever we paid for our house. So I believe anytime we can have a structured conversation that allows people to share what they're thinking, ask questions, float suggestions, and understand that we do have ordinances, and the ordinances govern how we act as a town, as people together in the community. My friend Bob over here has told me that this job is not to run an encounter group. He likes to tell me that. Well, I get that. I understand that, but I also know and love Cave Creek. And when I look around at your faces, you have questions about whether there's mistletoe in the tree or whether there's the right color here or there. And some of those questions just need to be floated, but responsible development also allows the person investing money in our town, in this community, to make good decisions about being a great neighbor. And we want that opportunity to rise up so we know that it's there. Thank you.
Councilman Rogerton?
I support this. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, let's see here.
I move to direct staff to draft an ordinance. I think that's where we are, right? Public comment.
Yeah, public
Sorry.
comment first, yeah.
Julie Goldhammer?
Hi, Julie Goldhammer, 34022 North 52nd Street. Thank you for everything you've said. I agree wholeheartedly. I do want to say I really support this idea. I want to thank everyone that came up with the idea. Mr. Miller and everyone else who supported it. I did attend the Phoenix Interconnect open house, and I wanted to use that as just a beautiful example. The utilities director was super helpful. Obviously, there were neighbors there that were that had questions, and that's really all we want to be able to do is ask questions. I know the statute is very clear, and I think most people in the public, when you explain that to them, they understand what they can and cannot do. But as you've mentioned, it's really important to be able to interact with those developers. I'll give two examples. Since I've moved here, when the hospital folks came in, that developer that I think his name was Justin or Jason, I can't remember, but he would call Mike and I directly, and he would ask, how are you guys doing? I haven't heard from you, because we're on 52nd Street and we were going to be impacted, but I'm quite a few houses down. And he wanted to know specifically what else they could do to make this better for us. And yes, they had meetings because that was a rezone. So that wasn't entirely an administrative process. And I do understand the difference. But it was such a beautiful thing because we talked more and more, and it came up from some of the P&Z meetings that the ambulance entrance and all of the traffic and the way the flow would go with the cars went from being on 52nd Street originally. That's where the ambulance was going to come in, which we really didn't want. And it went over to 53rd Street, which was a great thing. And then recently with the Desert Hills Brewery folks, This had nothing to do with the ordinances, but they were really great at talking with us afterwards. We just asked if we could have, pets come by. Could we have dogs on the patio and things like that so we could support them? I mean, silly little things, but so important. So thank you for you all, for what you said. I totally think this is an awesome idea, and thank you for all your efforts to put this together.
Thank you.
Ron Sova.
So excited here. I feel like I may want to pull a packet. No.
Don't do
No. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Ron Sova, Cave Creek Town Core resident. I'm basically in agreement with the town manager. And I am for total transparency when it comes to a development coming into town, providing residents with useful information as what it's going to be, what it's going to look like. But I think I have a better solution, picking up on the town manager's suggestions. I'm a retired developer, builder, and consultant with over 40 years' experience. I've had hundreds and hundreds of subdivisions throughout my career, and I'd like to think I did a few things right along the way. If you have a plan that is not asking for any variances, changes, nothing changing in the zoning, it's 100% compliant with our town, I see no reason that can't be approved administratively. This might be a weak argument, but we have $1 million houses going up on acreage with horses, barns, corrals, landscaping. It's all done administratively. And I don't see a reason that we still can't do this administratively. But I would also strongly suggest that the neighborhood be involved. And the best way to do that is the way I used to do it, and it works. The applicant working with the town, after the town sends out, their letters, I believe it's within a half a mile limit. 100%. Okay, with the signage on the site, with publications printed in the newspaper, as well as the town website notifying what's going on. That's not enough. It's not enough. Instead of having people come here and talk about something where no changes are going to be allowed, I think it should be incumbent on the applicant working with town planning to have a applicant meeting, not in town hall either, just someplace at someone's house. And the key reason for that is that everybody is relaxed. It's more informal. The applicant could have his engineer there, his land planner, so on and so forth. And I'd recommend somebody from the town planning department be there to, take down notes and answer questions. Key reason is when you come here for a public hearing, you're limited to 3 minutes. That's not enough when you're trying to get answers. And the fact that you on the council in a public hearing can't respond back to what an applicant or somebody at the dais has to say. In an informal meeting, you can't. You can get a lot more done, find out what's going to happen, what the good points are, what the bad points are, working with staff who can convey that to you, the town council, for the final decision. But again, I think less government is good, and to have to go through a public hearing for something that nothing can be changed, I don't see the sense of it. Now, if you're changing something, if you're asking for rezoning or a variance, different story, fully support that. So I think I'm in line with the town manager somewhat, but making it better and putting the onus on the applicant, town planning department, to deal with the residents in a more informal environment, get better comments, and then report back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
No additional
clarify?
speakers.
Grady, this isn't a public hearing. We're not suggesting a public hearing.
No, it was a public open house, which
Right.
is very informal.
Were people limited to 3 minutes at the
No,
open house?
in fact, usually
John just
what,
Posted?
yeah, so no, not at all. In fact, what I envision is that you would have a room set up with easels and have the site plans and have schematics there and have people just kind of informally walk up. But at the very beginning, the staff would make a brief little, introduction, welcome introduction, and explain the purpose of the meeting and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and just kind of mention what they're hoping to gain from this meeting. And then allow the applicant maybe to say some words, and then go back to the easels and let people ask questions one-on-one or in a group setting, and keep it as informal as possible.
That was the impression that I received.
I'm kind of the culprit on this one, so when we get to the motion, I'll be happy to do it.
I guess, any more comments, Raul? Okay, so we have gotten the comments and we are ready for the motion. Go ahead.
I move to direct staff to draft an ordinance for council consideration and adoption that includes a public involvement process prior to the site plan approvals.
Second.
Okay, you had the
Yeah,
motion.
So I spent a long time in the Marine Corps. I got involuntarily activated for every dust up the Marine Corps had. I've been in combat multiple times. The one thing that drives me crazy is when we don't let people speak. It's just a personal pet peeve of mine, and it drives me crazy. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time to figure out a way that we can get more public involvement. I think the more we speak to each other, the more we find out there's things we have in common rather than the things that separate us. And I think the more public involvement, the more public discussion, particularly early in the process, just makes everything a much better way of doing business. So I'll leave it to your own devices to figure out what that right process is. I'm sure you'll come back to us, but I applaud you for taking this on.
Vice Mayor?
I agree. The communication is, kind of my thing. And, this is a great step forward in the planning process. And I'm sorry that it will mean some more work for the staff, but it will be worth it. I think it will make the whole process go smoother. And so that's what we're here to do, is improve the way that we do business. And I think that this will be a great step forward in that regard.
I think back to the history of the town, when the risk pool folks sent us a letter saying, you guys knock it off and messing with people's property rights, or we're going to cut your insurance. Would have put us in a really bad place. So my concern is, at this point, I'm going to support this because I want to see what Grady brings forward, but I want to caution that when it gets in front of an official body, being the planning commission or the council, and if enough of us get stupid and try to force our will on something that's above and beyond, the only question is how big a check we have to write the developer, and whether or not the risk pool will cover us.
I've seen and been involved in situations where open dialogue has been helpful. And when an applicant comes in, we understand the community generally more than the applicant does. And I think when changes are made, it can be of benefit to the applicant in understanding how to adapt to the community. I've seen that happen. And I applaud this idea because I think it gives the applicant an opportunity to adjust to what the people want and to make the project more acceptable to the citizens. I see a win-win.
Well,
I see a win-win too, and I agree with what Ernie said, because there are rules that govern our living here together. But in Cave Creek, people are sweet with the idea of being able to voice their opinion, and this is that opportunity. Thank you.
I'm in support.
Yeah, I too am in support of this. I've seen every single case that comes around. They have a lot of uncertainty issues all over these things, all of the site plans and other things we do too. I really applaud having the interconnect project You know, people have those questions. We need to get them answered. If you don't answer them, it creates uncertainty and suspicion. And it's time that we acted to take that away. So I'm going to support this too. On that note, we are ready for a vote. So all those in favor of this direction to the town staff signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries 7-0. And I promised that was the last, but I ended, I missed the number 6. Sean? Yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, Sean. Yeah. Okay, we'll begin again. Sean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Brian, do you want to put the slideshows up? Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. It's going to give you overview of how the utilities are doing. This is the quarterly report, so it ended in December, so a little behind, but gives you a good idea of where we left last year with. Just overall water demands. Last year was a long, hot summer, so you can see red is actually the solid red line is the water demands. We had October was a high demand, atypical what we typically see. We expect at the beginning of the year that our water demands would drop because a large portion of the Carefree customer base, the biggest portion of it was actually disconnected. You can see that drop in March, but because of the long hot summer, we did see demand stay higher than we expected during the summer. And then because of how hot October was, we did see a marked increase in our water consumption. Total for the year, we did see a decrease, but this is just something we have to react to, which is environmental.
Sean, how is the loss of Carefree customers accounted here?
You can see it in March. You can see the dip in the red line. That's actually when the Carefree disconnected. I think it was 280 customers at Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway. That was the largest single disconnect that we had during the course of the project. And you can see there was a marked decrease in March.
Okay, so these are just straight historical. There's been no correction.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's hard for us to pull out the Carefree numbers. I guess we could, but this is actually just total demands from the system. Then we go to, this is a reflection of Cave Creek water, and this is the delivery of Central Arizona Project water. This is what we call a revenue versus non-revenue. That's the water that we deliver up the Cap Canal versus what we actually send out and bill to our customers. This is something that we track, something that we report to Arizona Department of Water Resources. So the green line is what, let's see here, that's the total amount of water that we delivered. And the stack graphs are actually what we build, and it's the components, the Cave Creek customers, the orange is the Cave Creek customers, billed through meters. Red is the interconnect with Desert Hills, which we consider a customer to Cave Creek Water. And then we have the Rancho Manana deliveries, and then we have the total cap water. I highlight the fact that this looks kind of odd that you'll see Rancho Manana actually has some 0 numbers. That's because in those months we weren't delivering them raw cap water. We were still delivering them effluent and backwash water. But you can see the total non-revenue water is below 13%. I think when I started a few years ago, it was actually about 15%. So we have dropped this down. By state mandate, we're trying to get that down to less than 10%. And I think we're on track. Part of the reason we've dropped this year is because with the interconnect, we never accounted for the system losses, both treatment or system losses with our transfer to Carefree. With the as of this year, we actually is starting to do that with the new rates that are in place. We actually charge them a 5% water accounting loss. So it actually is distributing the losses in the systems between the two systems, we think, appropriately. This next graph is our Desert Hills system. And again, it's our water is metered to the customers, and then the total cap water is the green line at the top. It's the CAP water as well as well water, because Desert Hills, we still have 3 operating wells. Because we did start in February transferring that 5% or adding that 5% to the transfer, theirs has gone up a little bit. We're still below 10% for non-revenue water out in Desert Hills. We do anticipate that Desert Hills has always been better, partly because they weren't getting billed for the system losses and the treatment losses. But since their metering system is newer, we do anticipate as we start with the metering replacement program in Cave Creek Water, that'll be the next big significant drop that we see in the Cave Creek numbers to really tighten up the difference between what we've brought into the system to what we've billed out to customers. This is a graph that's been frustrating for me. This is we're looking at the deliveries of water up the CAP pipeline to where we actually meter it and where we send it in the system. So this is not taking into account the metering. This is actually just the accounting of water. So we thought we were making good headway last year. We were looking at the filter, the metering at the West Tech filters. So in the summer, we actually changed from there's a combined meter upstream, which we think is fairly inaccurate, to actually the individual meters that in front of each one. Then we got stymied because someone finally looked at our SCADA system and realized that someone had calibrated the individual meters for the West Tech filters to the inaccurate one up front. So there's actually an error code that was built into the metering SCADA system. So we actually had to correct that, but it took us a couple of months to figure that out. So that was kind of frustrating. We're tracking much better, and actually we made an improvement just in the last couple of weeks to the plant. We knew that we have a air entrainment issue in the CAP pipeline. Every night when we actually turn the pipeline off, the air is introduced back into the system and it has to be blown off. The air actually impacts the meters at the plant. So we've actually added in the last few weeks new air relief valves at the treatment plant, which have been tightening up better so the meters can function better at the plant. So the next time I report on this, I can hopefully show you some much better improvements than we're seeing right now. This one's been a frustration for me because every time we think we're making a headway, we seem to get stymied and pushed back a little bit. But we're still committed to doing this. When we do the City of Phoenix Interconnect, as Council's aware, one of the things we're going to add to that project is the relocation of the Cat 4 booster pump station. We'll be adding a new magnetic flow meter with that project, so we'll get better metering overall. Eventually, we still need to go down and change out the meter that's actually at the Cat booster pump station. This Central Arizona project wants us to meter as close to the outtake as possible. Once the interconnect's done and that Cat 4 booster pump station work's been done, then we can take the pipeline out of service. It's going to take a few days to actually cut in that new meter, and we just can't take that risk right now with the pipeline. We always try to account for and get better reporting on our distribution losses in the system, and I'll give credit to the staff. They've been doing a great job of getting on leaks early and quickly and doing repairs to try and minimize the amount of leaking. In July, we actually had a 6-inch water line. So we have two lines. We actually have one's on Carefree Highway. So 3 crossings of Cave Creek Wash. One's across the bridge at Carefree Highway. One's on New River Cloud Road alignment, which is 8-inch line. And there's also a 6-inch line that goes north, basically due north and crosses into the Arroyo Este area. That line cracked. So since I've been here, it's cracked twice. We can't see that when that cracks. Actually, the 8-inch line is more noticeable for people because people walk the trail. The 6-inch line, people don't walk in that area of the wash. So we believe, looking back at records, that we lost potentially 4 million gallons of water when that line cracked because we did not notice it for a while. We actually found out because we were working with the town of Carefree with one of the disconnects. And when we shut off the systems, we were having areas of the system that were losing pressure, and we didn't know why. We believe it was because of this break in the line. So credit to the staff for sticking this one out, trying to find it. We are now actually using the side-by-side gator unit that we bought for the wastewater treatment plant is now, thanks to Teresa's help, we actually have a road license for that. Staff are using that to drive the alignments so we can look for issues. But in the case of the 6-inch line, it's about 15 feet deep where it crosses Cave Creek Wash. And because of the sandy soils, when it does break, we don't notice for a while. So we're looking at other options to try and do it, including putting some online monitoring at the fire hydrants, which are at the north end. If we start seeing a drop in pressure, that might be an indication that we need to go back in. In the capital program, we've accelerated a repair project on this 6-inch line because we've actually had it break a couple of times with significant water loss. Switching over to the wastewater side, our flows are the solid red line is showing our 2023 year-end numbers for the calendar year. We're trending about the same. You'll see that green bump that we have on there. That's our COVID bump. So as COVID started and people didn't leave, we actually saw an increase in our wastewater, but that's not typical. We are on track to actually see the typical flows that we're seeing. There's been a little bit of growth in the system overall, but not much, not significant. We're fairly flat and stable with our wastewater flows right now. Oh, sorry, went too back. We always talk about our deliveries to the Rancho Manana Golf Course, except for our deliveries to Desert Hills. This is actually our largest water system customer. And this one is a graph. Again, we're trying to work on some of this. The green solid line is showing the billings to them, which is based on the contractual obligation that what the contract says. And then the stacked bars are what we send to them. So the orange at the bottom is the effluent that we send from the treatment plant, because right now we only have the delivery to their lake system is the only outfall to that treatment plant system. The red line is showing the reclaimed water, and the CAP divert water. CAP divert water is coming from the Paul filters. So as the Paul filters try to modulate, we actually have to have a blow-off valve. That's actually something we're hoping to correct with the relocation of the Cat 4 booster pump station. We'll be better able to modulate the flow of the pipeline to meet the needs of the Paul filters, so we can run them more efficiently. And the backwash waters, again, as you treat water, you actually generate a waste. So we send that waste stream, instead of us sending it and treating it at the wastewater treatment plant, we actually send it directly to the golf course. So it actually is cost efficient for us to do it that way. It's just not overall efficient. And really, this is driving to the fact that the town really needs to find a second use for the town's effluent water, and that's coming out of our master plan. We got to find another beneficial use to put this water. So as the golf course is not needing it, we actually have somewhere else to put it to the town's benefit. So again, this one jumps around a lot. You'll see October, the green line jumps up. That's when they're starting to do their overseeding. So, but typically, you know, in September must have had a little bit of rain because they didn't use that much water. But, you know, again, right now, we have to send all their effluent to them because we don't have anywhere to place it. We still are generating wastewater, backwash water from the treatment process. And then, you know, there's certain months that we have to send them raw cap water. Again, you can look at September, looks odd because I think there was actually a storm that came through in September. So we sent them raw cap water, and all of a sudden the rainstorm comes, their lakes get filled up and they stop irrigating. So we can't react quick enough with our systems right now. It's really what this is telling us. And then we actually go back into losses on that system. So it's really, this slide bothers me, but it is what it is. At this point, about 125 acre feet of the water that we deliver to Rancho Manana is not able to be billed per contract, or is lost through their systems. Those losses are the evaporation of the lakes. They do have the 3 lakes up there. The overflow of the lake system, because again, we can't match their need for irrigation water because we have nowhere else to put our backwash water, our effluent. And then what we assume, the third is a calculated value, which is taken up to us, which is assumed what the lake liners are losing themselves. So about over 50% of the water that we waste in that system to that customer is actually what we can't control in the pond overflow. So it's been a few years since we've been metering that. We still want to continue conversations with them, but I think the real takeaway for the town is they can make their system more efficient, but until we have a place to put that water to benefit the town, we'll never truly get this number in check. Jumping over to the regulatory side, we have our backflow program. That's the program that helps us where there's backflow preventers required in the system to protect the town's water system in case of something happens, a depressurization of the system or breaking the water, that we don't want the water from the customer to get drawn back into the system. We require people to have wells on their property because potential for interconnect between a well system and a potable water system, we have to protect it. So it's running very good. You know, it looks like there's failed inspections, but effectively people, if backflow fails, they actually have time to correct that. So I think overall, there's no major issues with the backflow program for the system. The pre-treatment, I've talked about that for a while. We have done the switch to the new online app form, and it seems to be working well. So we have an outside consulting help us do some of the inspections and management through the online portal system that we have, Swift Comply. The vendors are actually uploading their information. There's been some training. We're still in the sort of the early stages, but overall, I think it's gone very well. It's actually helped reduce the staff time. It's got us into a tracking system that instead of having a spreadsheet before, we now actually have an online database. And people are uploading what we call the manifest. So when someone leaves the site and they've done the pumping, that gets uploaded to us. We have a copy of that. And if we go out and do field inspections, we can take photos. So they're attached to the actual pre-treatment devices that we have. So I think we have just under 50 pre-treatment devices, and that's grease interceptors, but it's also sand oil interceptors. We actually have some businesses that have sand oil interceptors. It's anything that's detrimental to the wastewater collection system that we want to keep out of them is part of this program. So the Carefree Disconnects, that's a project that's been going on for a number of years. I think it was 2021 we did the final settlement with Carefree. Overall, so area C, starting at the top, is fully converted. Area B is the area that we actually have about 20 to 25 residential homes still on the system. We're waiting for Carefree to upgrade one of their booster pump stations. I was just notified today that they're looking at doing they've got a design together and they're going to be bidding a improvement to their booster pump station. Once that work is done, obviously they have to go through the bid process, receive the bids, and actually do the construction. Then that will take that off. And that actually allows us to look at lowering some system pressures on the town's east core out of our Galloway booster sites. We're interested in that, but my gut feel is that's probably about a year away before those 25 customers are removed off the system. In area A, that's actually where the most of the customers were, and that was the big disconnect that actually happened last spring, March, April. The last remnant of that disconnect is actually the commercial area west of Cave Creek Road. So the Lowe's, the old CVS, and the Historic West. That is actually going to be disconnected as of March 18th. So the evening of March 18th, which is a Saturday night, they've asked us to do a shutdown of the 8-inch line, which we can do in our system and allow them to take those services over. So Carefree will take over domestic and fire service more so. They were waiting for the improvements of their new reservoir site on Tom Darlington in the Boulders area. That is now done in the booster station associated with that. So now they can provide fire protection. So they'll be taking those accounts over. Water resources. This is, I think I like talking about this slide. So the depressing part is that we've lost some of it finally happened, the subcontract and the transfer of the municipal and industrial water. So we're not 2,606 acre feet. We're now 2,228 acre feet of municipal and industrial water supplies. But for the last 2 years, while the transfer has been occurring and while we've been waiting for the subcontract to change, we've got the benefit of actually being able to start to recharge that water. We actually worked in agreement with Carefree. We were paying for that water, both the capital and delivery costs, and we were sending it to the recharge facility. So we got ahead on our recharge. It's going to slow down now because we don't have that buffer, especially this last year when they did a lot of those conversions. And we got the benefit of last year being able to do a lot of recharge with the water because they had already taken the customers and were using their allocation, not ours. So this past year, though, we were able to put about 1,000 acre feet in recharge. So total, we have just under 1,800 acre feet of long-term storage credits in place. It's all going into the hieroglyphics facility on the Central Arizona project through CAP. So that's a great advantage for the town. Now, we're back to our full allocations of municipal and industrial water, which is the more secure of the water supplies. And then we still have the non-Indian agricultural water available to Desert Hills, although just after we got that, we were asked to do a 25% cut. We anticipate another 25% cut last year or next year. That's at 386 acre feet in the allocation. And this past year, we were only able to order 290. We expect that they'll ask us to cut back again this next year. That's the less secure water supply. But that was purchased for to get a a surface water allocation for Desert Hills. So Desert Hills customers are paying for that water. Sadly, we're in this unknown with the drought that's going on in the state, but it is still a benefit overall to our water portfolio to have that water. Let's see. There's been a lot of activity in this last quarter. One thing that was kind of unique, we were talking about after last year's outage we had on at the CAP Station 4, I asked staff, are we okay? And do we know how to isolate all the other vaults? And it came up that we were missing an isolation valve, the one south of the CAP 2 booster pump station near Joe Max Road. So we went in there with a Vector truck and we actually found it. So that's been buried. And talking with staff, historic staff, it's been over 20 plus years that valve's been buried and no one knew where it was. So we now located it and we've actually brought it up so we can actually operate it. So we can actually isolate the CAP 2 booster pump station. There's one other inline valve between the CAP 4 and the treatment plant. I'll probably work with staff. We think we have a good idea where that one might be. So that plan sheet is marked preliminary, not for construction, but the air relief valve that's on that plan sheet is within 10 feet of where it was shown. So we might go and do the same thing to try and find that valve. The other thing we noticed when we were in there, and it's another hardship, is that we found the connection to the ACP asphalt cement pipe to the air relief valve that's just downstream of this booster pump station. And then they had directly tapped a galvanized 3-inch gate valve into the line, and they epoxied it in. So as we've been looking ahead to trying to do repairs on the air relief valves, each one of them is giving us problems because this is going to require shutdown, and we're actually have to get to do something. We're probably cut that out, put a wrap on it. We're not sure what damage we're going to do trying to actually remove that gate valve from the pipe. So, but now we are knowing more about what we have, and it's a challenge. So, see, staff, you can see your new distribution supervisor, Andy, there smiling in the middle. So our staff are all hardworking, and the supervisors get involved. Again, an 8-inch line on 10th Street in Desert Hills. We go in and do the repairs. We try to get onto it. We've been lucky to have the equipment. We have the vac trailer we originally purchased. We're having some issues with, so we've been still renting one, and you'll see one moving forward in next year's capital budget to buy another a vac trailer. So we have 2. It's a critical piece of equipment. So I think it's allowed us to actually be more responsive to issues like this, because when you're starting to dig around it, you think, well, let's just get the backhoe and dig down there. But a lot of times we don't know exactly where the pipe is. Get it, and having to wait to bring a vac truck out because we don't own one can slow this down. So by having the right equipment, and our staff are able to get in there and do these repairs much more quickly, which has actually helped reduce our water losses on the system. We still have the issue of the pipe material that was used. The whiter pipe is actually a thinner wall pipe, and a lot of times they didn't bed it properly. So we still will have that challenge ongoing, but being more responsive and be able to get in to repair it means we're at least not losing water in the system. Done some maintenance projects at the water treatment plant. We actually had to the year before, we actually had to replace the compressor, and this is the compressor that actually helps feeds the Westsec filters. We had a cracked piston in that compressor, which I'd never seen before. So we replaced the top component. And now this past year, the seam on the compressor tank split open on us. So we're finding that equipment that we're receiving now, we're questioning the quality is not the same as it used to be. So it makes it a challenge for us. But in this case, the staff were able to do that, but it was something we weren't anticipating. I understand it really shocked the operator. Was actually not too far away when that seam split open on this compressor tank. So yeah, we're continuing to do things like install pumps and motors as much as we can. So we're not bringing in contractors. So we're being much more efficient with it. It actually helps us get more done because we're not having to, we're using staff to get this type of work done. And wastewater plant, we always, I give kudos to these guys and the divers, but actually in this case, they're not diving into our SBR treatment basins. They're actually in the chlorine contact basins. So there's 3 channels to that basins, and they were actually set up so that they have gates that go up and down that allows us to isolate them. The gates have been broken as long as I've been here, and it sounds like they were broken not too long after they were put into service. So initially back in 2010. So we had, as a last resort before we go and start replacing, we had the divers come out and to see if they could do some work underwater to actually free these gates up. Bringing them up allows us to isolate the channels and actually clean them out separately. So right now we have to actually isolate the entire chlorine contact basin, which has not been too bad, but long term is we'd like to get these gates put back into service. So we brought our divers back out, and they were able to look at this and find out that their little tricks did not work. So there's something we're going to have to look to do in the capital program to get those gates replaced. On the wastewater side, continuing, I think it was the last quarter report, we talked about a lot of the work that we were doing actually in Cape Creek Road by Mountain View Pub, and actually in the line work inside Case Coach Village. So this is the final result. We just sort of bridged the two. We added 2 new manholes inside of the 6-inch line that goes through Stagecoach Village. That's also because that line extends across Galloway, and we'll pick up the new apartment complex. So we actually had 2 sewer cleanouts, which didn't give us ability to access and clean that line. So we dropped in 2 manholes, and we actually also replaced the section of pipe that was broken. The same time, the contractor was actually in Cave Creek Road, and he did a rehabilitation on 3 of the manholes just down on Cave Creek Road, just down from Mountain View Pub. So you can see what a fully coated manhole should look like. We have a lot of manholes that don't look like that. So we're still working on that program to continue to work on the collection system.
So Sean, will that improve the odor down in that area?
sadly, someone just came by and told me that we had another odor complaint. So we need to actually continue to work. One of the customers out in Cape Creek Road is, we have a long, it's about 350-foot long service lateral for Sansui. They've been keeping up with their intersector. What we found is while we were doing the work in Cape Creek Road, we found that we actually were able to get into their interceptor, their lateral, sorry, and found that there's some dip sections. So I think we need to work with them. The problem is that their lateral is actually in Cape Creek Road. So there's no practical way for them to get in to clean it. So it's something that we might just take on as a maintenance task. So we're actually overdue and we want to get a contractor in to jet that out and keep that clean. They're the top end of it. And then, we obviously have Mountain View Pub discharging at that. So there's not much flow, but there's actually a large concentration of it's highly concentrated flow at that point. But we know with the Sansui lateral, there's a couple of dip sections. So there's some holding up of material in there. So we think we need to work with them just to keep it clean. So our goal is to keep that down. In the past, they were doing things like putting charcoal odor canisters inside the manholes. That was really just masking the problem. We're trying to actually find out what the root cause is and actually address it. In the case where we have a business that has a large lateral that again runs in one of our major roads, it requires a lane closure just to get in to maintain it because there's no safe way to do it without doing a full lane closure on Cave Creek Road. It makes sense for us to work with that property owner. Make sure that keeps odors down because that's just not good for our customers, our residents, or anybody. So
Sean, are there really two 90s in that section?
no, 245s is what we found.
245s, okay.
But we found 3 dip sections within the 350 feet.
Yeah, the 245s are where the contractor that put it in originally didn't realize where the right of way was. And that's why they moved it laterally like that with the 245s.
Yeah, we went into it and actually cut in some clean outs too. We expected when we put a camera up it that we'd find some clean outs, but we didn't. So we actually added some. So now we can service it more easily.
It's good for slowing it down.
The Rancho Mignona lift station continues to cause us trouble, not on a pumping capacity at this point, but we are getting a big problem with disposable wipes and rags being placed in the collection system. Do not put disposable wipes in the sewer system, please. I encourage you. It's actually, the staff have to take this out. It's not, we actually have all our floats and our other devices in there. We actually physically have to pull up and cut these things off of them. It's terrible. We've gone to the point where every 2 weeks we bring in a contractor to remove this material. We're not seeing the problem as badly at the Stagecoach or the Rancho Mignona or the Stagecoach and Chipperosa lift stations. It's being concentrated at the Rancho Mignona lift station. So it's gotten to the point, I know in the capital program, we do want to rebuild this site. We would like to put some sort of screening upstream to help remove this, but we're actually looking at other alternatives that we can do maybe in the next few years because the rebuilding of this site is a few $1 million, and that's a big hit on the wastewater CIP. We think we actually have a solution that will, we can do a new manhole just upstream of the lift station. They do a little a system that actually consolidates and gets the rags and pushes it up, and we actually would keep it inside the manholes. We just come in and use the vac truck and actually vector this unit out. We just got to make sure it can work power wise, and it's probably going to be about $150,000 to $200,000. But the problem with this ragging is that it actually does get on the instrumentation. We've actually seen it when it does get into the force main. It actually gets, last time we opened up the force main, the check valves that actually isolate the site were actually completely clogged with this material too. So it gets bound up. The pumps will actually grind this up. So it's not actually impacting the pumps as much, but it's impacting everything associated with the wet well and associated with the force main too. So again, I implore people to please do not throw anything down the sewer system, besides toilet paper. Some other general maintenance stuff that we do. This is, our staff. Again, we've got a really good crew and we're going out and doing as much projects as we can. This as we did some piping work at both the 14th Street and Cloud and 3rd Avenue Joy Ranch, which are both 2 sites out in Desert Hills. And then we also, this last quarter, we actually added new flow meters out in Desert Hills to the well sites. We want to eventually add them to the booster pump stations out in Desert Hills. But there was existing meters at the well sites they weren't accurately reading, and there was some issues where they weren't reporting correctly through our SCADA system. So we've actually upgraded all those to help enhance our ability to report on our well consumption, our well production out in Desert Hills. So again, we had a contract consultant help us with the final tweaking of them and setting it up, but it's largely our staff that put them in. So I give credit to our staff. And again, another pump that we were able to, at 7th Street Booster in Desert Hills, north of Troy Ranch, we had a failed pump. So we were able to have, again, we have our 2 crane trucks now. And we're actually able to get in and remove stuff and it's not rely on consultants and contractors. We also did work on the last quarter on the generators. So we have a total of 5 generators, the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, the Neary booster, the Rancho Viñada lift station, and Stagecoach. So we actually had a new vendor come in. We do the service on them. So those generators, again, we want to make sure that they're available in emergency. So we have to replace things like batteries and make sure that they are running. We're having, the next component we have to make sure is all working at all the sites is actually the automatic transfer switches. So again, that's one case where we do need to bring vendors in to help us keep them up. A lot of text on this one, but this is the meter replacement program. We're close to getting the final awarded contract from the Bureau of Reclamation for the grant. So we've been on hold, waiting for some stuff, but then the grant administrator sent us a really good email the other week. It's just been on my plate to finish off, which will allow us to get the final contract from them and actually get the $500,000 from the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant. That allows us then to start doing large purchasing of the meters and getting contractors involved and also setting up the sites that will actually collect the metering data. We have one site right now we're using as a pilot. We've installed. We had to use operational dollars because the grant wasn't available. The vendor had one available. So right now we have a collector site up at our Carriage 2 booster station, and we actually can get hourly data from about 380 meters in the system right now. We have not pushed that out to customers. That's our next step is we're going to work with the vendor on their web interface that they can do. But since there's only a limited number of customers of the 2,500, 2,400, we have in Cape Creek Water, only 380 can get it. We want to get some, now once we get the grant, we can actually go very quickly to get the rest of the sites up, and then we can start going out and starting to get the outreach done and then start changing meters out. So we'll help the overall accounting of our system and do what is effectively a leap in technology from a drive-by radio system to an automatic AMI, automatic metering infrastructure, which will give people, including ourselves, but also customers, the ability to see their water usage more accurately and hopefully find things like, leaks more quickly. They're not waiting for us to tell them about a leak, or we can observe a leak more quickly. The meters will tell us if there's continuous loose usage, i.e. a toilet is continuously running. We'll see that through the meters. We see it now, but we don't see it until we've gone by and read it. Now we can set parameters in the system, and the customer can set parameters in the system. So I think that's the next big improvement in the town's overall water resources, is actually getting our metering tightening down and providing that information to our customers. So I'm very excited about that one. And then we can look at doing the next upgrade, which would be adding a similar system out in Desert Hills. About half the meters in Desert Hills are compatible and half aren't. So that's something we've built into the capital program to allow us to at least put the basic infrastructure up and, again, provide as much information as we can to our customers. And then I didn't talk about, we've got multiple CIP projects in the works. The City of Phoenix Interconnect project is set. Again, we've asked with the meeting get moved this month is April, May is when the contractor MGC is looking to mobilize on the site and actually start doing site work, start seeing some activity. Another challenge for the town utilities has been staffing. So we've been short a couple of staff positions. I give credit to our staff. New deputy director, Nick, he's actually able to we actually have 3 offers out and accepted. So we actually have in the next couple of weeks, 3 new staff people starting to help us out. It's been a challenge. We've had several people come through us and leave, which has been a challenge. The people we're bringing on board are actually not quite certified at the level, but we're at the point where we're bringing people in, and hopefully we're going to train them and build them ourselves, and hopefully they'll stay with us a little bit longer too. But just in the industry and in the valley, it's been a challenge getting operators and having operators stay. So that's something we're still seeing. So, I'm knock on wood, we're looking good right now, but I don't take that for granted. And another thing that you haven't really heard too much about is we actually have a lead and copper service inventory going on statewide at this point. It's actually a federal mandate that the issue is that the lead in the solder used in some copper service lines that we have to go through and do an inventory to get to the state. Then they will help identify if we need to, there's funds available, but more so it's the inventory phase to show where we might have this. This is an issue. It's both not only our service connection to the meter, but it's actually the mandate goes further. It's actually the service connection to the house. So we're working through and we're actually cataloging. It's forced us to go through our inventory of our GIS system, our mapping system. We're putting in inventories, installed dates for lines. After a certain date, I think it was 1977, the use of lead in copper solder was actually outlawed. So if we can show which lines might be below that or that threshold, that actually has been helpful. So if we can show that the water line wasn't installed till after that point, or we did a replacement project after that point, we can get that out of the inventory. So, but it's something that's taking a lot of staff time just to work through, but it's actually something that's being done statewide actually right now. So there's a lot of staff time by every utility being spent on this project right now. And we're one of them. So with that, any questions by council? I know we're doing a lot and I go through it very quickly.
You did. Thank you for excellent comprehensive report. Oh, thank you, Bob. People can actually hear what I'm saying. That's dangerous. It truly was an excellent report and very comprehensive. All of our wastewater is going to Rancho Mañana, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. It seems to me there's nothing we can really do about the outflow that's coming out of Rancho Mañana. I don't think we really have a good aquifer. We storing water in our local rock. It seems to me, from my experience in geology, that's really problematic. But there are times when I think we're losing water in the summer because of the lining in the lakes. Is that still a major loss issue?
It is, and we are actually able to calculate that from the standpoint that we do have a meter physically on the overflow from the west larger lake. So staff go by weekly, and read that value. And then we actually can measure and pretty accurately the evaporation off the lakes. You wouldn't think we'd be able to do that, but based off the surface area of the lakes, we know, and there's actually the Maricopa County reports on an evaporation pan that they have at Lake Pleasant, which we think is very similar to what we have here. And they actually do daily data, which tells you how much evaporation. So one of my staff members, Ryan Hill, actually correlates that back, and we actually calculate how much evaporation. So taking those two out, then we do believe there's still, I think it was about 20 acre feet of the 125 acre feet, which is liner losses that we believe that their liners are leaking.
Is there a strong reason for Mr. Alrod, and the Rancho Mañana people to replace that lining? It seems to me that it's our loss, and what does it help them in order to replace the lining? So,
yeah, we actually had a conversation with them last year, and it's just been, and I'll apologize, it's on me, is that we need to re-engage with them. We had a consultant come out and did an evaluation of their lakes last year, or was it the year before? It might have been. The lake level was down. We weren't keeping up with their demand. So the consultant was actually in the valley and did a fairly comprehensive report, because he could see in the West Lake, where the majority of death is, we were down about 10 or 12 feet. So he could see a lot of the liner, and came back and said, yeah, there's a lot of damage and a lot of repairs that need to be done to that liner. We've shared that with Rancho Mañana staff. I actually do want to sit down with them again and talk to them about it. I think one of the things, and I think I've talked to council about it, is that maybe we engage with that consultant to come up with the next level report, which would be them come up with repair recommendations and a estimate of how you would do it. Because one of the things is we're delivering water to the East Lake, and I'm sorry, I don't have a graphic. It flows to the Middle Lake and then it flows into the West Lake. Is how do we get, if we're having to drain one of those lakes, how do we continue to get water to the Brewster pump station? So the consultant said that they could help us map that out, and then we could hand that to Rancho Mañana, and then they'd actually be able to develop a capital program to do that repair also. It is a loss in the system. We've had the conversation saying, why do you have to have the 3 lakes? The upper 2 lakes are really shallow. And if we can eliminate those, then you could actually eliminate potentially about a third of the evaporation. We estimate about 36 acre feet last year was evaporated out of the lake. So if we eliminate a third of that, that's over 10 acre feet of water that we could get savings of. The real crux of the problem is we can do all this stuff and work with them, and they're actually been receptive. We have the town right now just has nowhere else to put that water. We actually had Clear Creek come in Career Creek Associates do a hydrologic study, and they said that down by where the water ranch is actually a good location to recharge. The problem is that we won't be able to recover. Because as soon as we introduce that water down to the Cave Creek Wash at that point, it's going to go downstream. So we can't get into it. We can generate some storage credits, but it's paper water I can't do anything with. So we really need to get a beneficial use. And we've actually had a conversation with the city of Phoenix. We've had it twice now about, can we send water across Carefree Highway down to the golf course, which is south of us, which is currently on the city of Phoenix's reuse system. So instead of them pumping water 12 miles north to meet that customer, can we install the pipeline that allows us to send some water to them so we can meet both needs? So if we know that Rancho Manana is not using the water, we can send some other water and let Phoenix know, hey, you realize we're going to be sending some water to the other lakes. And that other golf course, their lakes are 2 to 3 times the size of Rancho Manana. So I think it can absorb a lot more water. So I think I've come to the conclusion, and the master plan is going to point to this, that's probably our best option. We need another place to put that water, and then we can work on a water exchange with Phoenix. And since we already have an IGA with Phoenix to treat and deliver, we're basically generating a water account for them to treat and deliver water to us through the pothole system. So it seems like a win to us. There is a capital cost to it. I was very hopeful that we'd be able to recharge and get recovery, but yeah, what Clear Creek said is that it's just not practical to recharge. And it'll basically, it's going to be as soon as we put it in the ground, it's going to be south of Carefree Highway, and we can't draw it back out. So we're not going to be able to do, unless we do an injection well, we're constantly injecting and withdrawing it all the time, which is an option, but it's a fairly expensive one, doing one of those injection wells. They call them ARS wells.
And I think that water ultimately is going into a Superfund site down there, so. yeah,
It-
there's a lot of
It
real
is, but we've
contamination
actually
problem
spoken
once
to
it goes
Maricopa
into
County,
Phoenix.
who manages that fund.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Cave Creek dump site. They've been doing remediation for more than 15 years now. I think it's close to 20 years now. So we actually reached out to them and told them the volume of water we have, and they are not concerned about us recharging upstream of them anymore because they've removed so much. I think it's TCE is what's in the water that they've been removing, because they've been very aggressive about the remediation of that site. So.
Thank you.
Could you add a blurb every time, status of the wells in Cave Creek? I know you said we had several of them and you were working on them. I don't need an update or anything now, but just when you do the quarterly report, if you can put a blurb in to say, here's the well status.
Okay. Will do. Yeah, I think I mentioned it, that we're trying to get back to council to get authorization so we can use a consultant to we pulled some pumps out of some casings. We did some preliminary investigations, but we need to clean them and then do some pump drawdown tests to verify. So.
Other questions? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
and is there a way that we can communicate with people effectively about these wipes that are going into our, I mean, it says, these are recyclable. Well, not really. But
Yeah, if you
it
look
would
at
be
the
nice
back
if
of the
people
pack,
could
yeah.
find out, this is a problem.
Yeah,
Is
if you
it-
look at the back of the packaging, they all have the out, it's actually an industry problem right now. They all say, it's up to the jurisdiction whether or not these are flushable. They leave it up to us, and we're pretty much saying no.
Yeah.
So we're actually looking to do,
Yeah.
since we only have 900 wastewater customers, we've been working with the our internal graphic staff to actually come up with a package and do direct mailers to the people on the sewer system. And just say, separate from the water bills, and which includes the sewer component, and just do a separate mailer just to them. And we believe, between the residential and the commercial users that are on the system, just to let them know there's just a yuck factor. You realize the staff have to go in and physically, the tangles around equipment, they're actually in there with their hand, the gloved hand, but having to cut these things off of equipment every couple of weeks.
Maybe you could ask for volunteers in the community.
Thank you, Sean, very much. Appreciate it.
Nice work, Sean.
Yeah.
Keep it up. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.